Within the accounting market, it's like $150 billion or so of spend every year. It covers everything from payroll to tax prep. What does System 6 focus on?
Yeah, and it's fun to hear that number and just remember that we're in a really large market. So we do day-to-day finance services for our customers. So bookkeeping, payroll processing, invoicing, bill pay. The other big parts of that market are tax work. So like tax preparing and filing. Today, we don't do that, but we're actually under contract to buy another great tax practice in the next couple of months. So we'll be getting into tax. And then the big bucket is like audit and attest work, which
Sure.
is like signing off on financial statements. All public companies need to get audited. We don't do that. Most small business accounting firms don't do that. And that's, a portion of the market that we don't touch, but certainly, tax and bookkeeping is a large enough market for us to achieve our ambitions.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Chris. For those who don't know Chris, he is the owner of System 6. They do outsourced accounting and financial services for a ton of small businesses with a particular focus on businesses that have been recently acquired. And so he's often around at the different self-funded search and business acquisition conferences and events. So Chris, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with me.
Yeah, excited to be here. Love what you guys are doing in Main Shares. There's obviously a ton of momentum right now around the idea of going to buy and grow a small business. That's been my journey. It happens to be an accounting business, but a lot of my lessons are probably applicable across a bunch of industries. And yeah, excited for the conversation.
Yeah. I found that a lot of it boils down to people problems. When you first acquired System 6, how large was the team?
We were a team of 18 when I bought it. We're now effectively double that, which has been a fun ride. I actually give the seller a lot of credit because he established this, was just this mentality here that our people are the product. We don't have a machine on a factory floor that we're turning on. It's like our machine walks out the door, so to speak, every day. And so I think that's true in most small businesses. Like you have to be focused on providing a good people experience for your team so that they can then go provide a good customer experience to your customers.
Sure. Over the years, how many of those hires came as a result of another acquisition or were folks that you organically hired?
So we've been primarily growing organically over the first, I'd say, 4 years of our journey. So, a lot of that is like, I think I had to realize it takes longer to maybe get to go do additional acquisitions if you're not like set up as a roll-up strategy, because I bought an 18-person business. Like I was in the weeds. I did 200 sales calls a year for 2 to 3 years. So we did our first add-on acquisition last December. So that was 3 new team members that
Sure.
came with that. So the vast majority of our growth, both customer and team member, has been organic. And then now we're spending more time on acquisitions in addition to continuing to do organic. But I think it depends on what you buy, but it was really good for me to spend a couple of years kind of in the business, learning it and growing it before now being able to spend a little bit more time on acquisitions.
When you first stepped into the owner's seat, what was the revenue breakdown between payroll and accounting services?
Yeah, so we actually charge kind of one fixed fee for all of our clients. So it's not like super clean breakdown, but when I bought the business, what I can say is a smaller percentage of our customers were doing kind of all of our services. So our main services are bookkeeping, payroll, bill pay, and invoicing. Our existing customers, we definitely started pushing that more. But I would say that the biggest difference in our growth and what's really helped us accelerate our growth is that we really started selling all of that more aggressively. So
Sure.
if you look at our number of new customers a year, it actually hasn't changed that much from when I bought it. Like when I bought it, we were adding 30 clients a year. Now it's more like 40 to 45, but the average new client size has basically doubled. And some of that is because I've gone up market just a little bit overall, but a big part of it is we're just more aggressively selling that, hey, we can do all of your back office, not just your bookkeeping. And I think,
Sure.
it's just smart to think about, anybody who's buying a business, like, hey, what else can I sell them that I already do today or that I can easily add? Because it makes your sales process more efficient. My sales guy can close as much revenue in one call versus 2 now, basically. And also it increases stickiness because now we're doing more things for our customers. So it's harder for them to transition out.
When you think about pricing, are you trying to back into, okay, given the complexity and the size of the business, how many man hours is this going to take? And then kind of add in a
Yeah.
margin? Or how do you think about that? Because I imagine it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
hard.
There's no, like in accounting, I'm sure this is in other industries. There's like all this talk of like move to value pricing, just sell like based on what your value is. It's like, yes, I get that, but that's pretty academic and it's like hard to figure out truly what our value is. And often like the customer may not actually value us as much as we're really worth, especially when we're
Sure.
providing like an outsourced service like this. So no, the way we do our pricing is, yeah, it's kind of like targeting to a margin for us. So we take access to every customer's financials during our sales process and we review it both to give them kind of we call it our sort of discovery product. So you sign up with us to do discovery, we take access. It's kind of like doing an auto checkup and we'll tell you everything that we see is wrong. But that's also so you could go fix it on your own. But it's also very important for us to understand how your bookkeeping actually work. What's the actual transaction volume? And then, yeah, we estimate how much time it's going to take us. And then we put sort of a margin on that. We're going to sort of look at what we can automate and make go faster. So often, like we're going to do it a lot faster than the previous owner was doing or the previous accounting team. And then, yeah, we kind of apply our healthy target margins. And the interesting thing about our sales process is the team that's going to serve the client actually does that estimating work and they get paid, salary, but they also get variable comp based on, profitability. So they're incentivized, to put a proper estimate there. And then our sales guy maybe wants to sell it for lower, just get the deal done. And so there's kind of a healthy little tension built in there.
Interesting. And is the discovery product, is that paid?
Yeah, so we typically do charge for it. It's a couple $100. I will say that is not. I mean, sure, it's nice. And to give you context, we get 20 to 30 leads a month. We talk to maybe 2/3 of them. So we're having, let's say, 20 phone calls a month. We're probably going to do 10 discoveries a month based off of that. We charge a couple $100. So that's it could be thousands of dollars a month in revenue, but it's not insanely important to us. So we are happy to, if it's some people have like we lead with the price because we tell them, hey, we're going to spend 3-4 hours reviewing your financials. And we're going to give you a product, which is a report that says kind of what's wrong and outlines the technology you should use to make your systems better. But if people fight it, like we're happy to put a discount in place. It's really meant to be to shy away super price conscious people and the tire kickers.
Sure.
We spend time preparing these quotes and we want to make sure that's not a complete waste of time.
Yep. That makes total sense. That kind of brings me to one of the questions I had. There's been this wave of offshore bookkeeping at super
Yeah.
cheap hourly rates. Obviously, the quality gets sacrificed there and some amount of communication and context. So it sounds like
Yeah.
with this fee, you're trying to like dissuade those people from doing an apples to apples comparison of y'all. How else do you kind of pitch against that trend?
Yeah, I mean, like we're pretty transparent with it. So in the first call, even before we do the discovery, we're going to go through your P&L, understand how your financials work, and we are open. Like we'll say, hey, based on what I've learned so far, you're probably in this price range. By the way, we're not the cheapest person on the block, and we say this. We say we don't charge hourly, but if you were thinking about us hourly, we're certainly not the 30, 40, $50 an hour option that's out there that's heavily international. We tell people we're going to be north of $100 an hour effectively. So we kind of tell people we're expensive, honestly.
Yep.
Yeah, because then we're trying to weed out the person that wants $30 an hour. And then if the person, if $100 an hour sounds expensive to someone, we immediately fall on with, hey, part of the reason that we charge for that is we've got a team-based service model here. So we're very quick to explain to people that like every account gets 3 people on it, a junior person, a mid-level kind of relationship person, and then a senior person who's doing like review and really management of the team that's doing the work. And we're explaining to people that like, yeah, you're paying extra for some redundancy, but that's super important so that, if you just hire a one-off bookkeeper offshore, if they get sick, you're screwed and you're going off to hire again. We're just trying to position ourselves as we work with larger companies. We're not the cheapest person, but you get super high touch, you get extra layers of support. Um, and, we kind of try to point out some of the good logos we've worked with. Like we're just trying to associate ourselves with, I think, bigger, ambitious folks that aren't trying to cut costs everywhere.
Sure. That makes sense. And for that average customer, are they coming to you because they have outgrown their ability to do this in-house, or are they churning from another outsourced provider?
Yeah. So the most common thing, and especially it's because, a lot of our customers come to us through the acquisition channel, is, hey, we just bought this business and the office manager is doing the accounting, and I maybe just need, like, usually the office manager is great. They're not getting fired. It's just like accounting is not their specialty.
Sure.
And now the new owner wants to grow the business more. So the office manager's got more like biz ops stuff to deal with. So we're kind of taking something off of their plate. Sometimes it's, the owner's spouse historically is often, the back office person, and that person's going away in an acquisition. We do see, hey, I've got a bookkeeper, they're not working out. Like we see that, and we lose customers. From time to time we mess up.
Sure.
But generally the service is, relatively sticky. So it's not necessarily often replacing someone else that's third party and outsourced like us. It's usually replacing an internal resource that either, isn't sophisticated enough. Like sometimes someone just bought a company, they want accrual financials, and the current office manager isn't well suited for that. So we'll kind of step in there, or, they're growing and need more support, or the internal person's, kind of leaving as part of the transition.
Got it. And within the complexity, I imagine
Yeah,
sometimes the business becomes more complex as your client over time.
totally.
And you have to kind of factor in all of a sudden, like the target margin is slowly going away as they make their business more and more complicated and expand other services and products. How do you think about like repricing and updating the SOWs?
Yeah. So that like definitely happens. And that's like one of the reasons we don't really work with a ton of like true super fast growing VC backed startups, because like that pace of change is, insanely fast. And it's just like, you can't increase prices every 2 months,
Right.
So we track profitability by customer on a monthly basis. So we're looking at it, and so we know, yeah, I mean, we have a system around it. And I think in professional services, like you got to be careful to not just be a collection of people doing work, because then this stuff gets left to how aggressive is each person in price increases. So yeah, we have a policy basically. So we look at profitability by client every month. If any client is below the target, the team on that has to kind of fill out sort of an explanation of why. And it's usually like, oh, they they bought a bunch of extra inventory last month, and we're like, no big deal. Like we're partners with our clients. We're not going to jam them on something like that. But if it 2 months in a row, then like internally, the manager really works with the team to figure out like, hey, can we do anything to get more efficient? Because like maybe we need to be better. And then if it's 3 months in a row, then we're going to like basically come up with a plan. Maybe it's a price increase. Maybe it's, hey, we need to give back some scope if the customer doesn't want to have a price increase. So it's something we have to monitor, because otherwise, yeah, it can get out of whack pretty quickly.
Interesting. If I remember correctly, you guys are fully remote. Is that right?
Yeah, 40 people, 25 states, 3 countries. So
Oh, wow.
we are becoming a global organization at this point.
That's awesome. How do you think about talent retention? Because obviously part of the problem is getting them in the door, but then having also spent time in financial services, it can be kind of a grueling, get battered by the client job as well. How do you try to balance that with your team?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what I talked about earlier, which is like, we're pretty open about this. Like at the end of the day, our mission is to elevate and empower our people. Like right behind that is we got to serve our clients well, but we have to be first and foremost focused on having a great employee experience. And what's interesting is like, it's not, that doesn't just only, like, we've surveyed our people, we've talked to them, like, why are they still here? It's not just, oh, I want easy, flexible. Like, no, they like working with growing clients. They like to feel fulfilled, but we do, have to have good compensation, B, like, respect what people who work remotely want, which is some level of flexibility. If you want to go pick up your kid from school, like, go do that. We're not, like, chaining you to your desk. Um, and then, you know, growth opportunity. Like, I think it's nothing different than if you're an in-person business. You just have to provide a good employee experience, but that doesn't just mean, fun and chill and, nothing to do. Like, people we have found in accounting enjoy serving clients. We just got to make sure it's clients that are like worth serving because they're not a pain in the ass, they're not rude, and they make our people feel valued.
Got it. How much state specific regulation do you need to know to service your customers? Like, are you running
Uh,
into that for like bill pay or payroll?
yeah. So on the bill pay side, not as much. On the payroll side, there's absolutely a lot of stuff you need to be aware of, but most of that is actually tied to the company that's actually like literally processing like the payroll software. So most of our clients use Gusto or ADP or Paylocity. There's a couple others. Our job is to like help advise the clients on which is the right tool, help them get it set up correctly. Be the consistent person that 2 days before every payroll checks the bank balance, sends the payroll numbers, to the owner, pulls in the hours to make sure they're correct. And then Gusto, as the software, it's their job to, you know, calculate and remit withholdings correctly, flag if there's something that needs to be registered in a new state. So we rely on the software partners to kind of be the sort of the point person on the compliance stuff. And it's our job to really administer the software. But I will say, this is a benefit of working with someone like us. We've got 200 customers. We run payroll for over 1,500 employees. So like chances are everybody on our team has worked with your state before and therefore is going to be able to like, even though we're not representing that we are the expert for that state, we've worked in there before. So we can maybe flag something like, Gusto didn't call this out. Like, go look into it ourselves.
Sure.
So that's kind of how we handle that.
Got it. And how much does that change on the tax prep side? Like, once this add-on closes, is
Yeah.
that going to be mainly focused on one or two states?
No, I mean, so we're buying a remote bookkeeping and tax practice that I'm super excited about. They've got tax team in 3 different states. It is primarily concentrated for now in one state because that's kind of where the owner has been. But what happens pretty quickly is while a lot of the clients are based here, like they've got businesses that are across state lines. We have a head of tax that's coming along with this that I'm super excited to work with. And it will probably mean, that he may see some more clients in different states. Again, a lot of the work is done in California. So if we feel really good at California taxes, we feel like other states are going to be easier to absorb. But yeah, I mean, tax software, tax research software exists for a reason. And it'll be something that like we're going to have to make sure we're resourcing our new tax team to handle potentially some new states that are going to come in with our national customer base.
Got it. When you think about growth for System 6, how much of it is adding new capabilities like this current acquisition versus adding either personnel or clients?
Yeah, I mean, so my grand vision for System 6, is going to be both because we ultimately want to be like the go-to one-stop shop of remote professional services for the small business client. I mean, we see it today. Like we do their books, they're paying for bookkeeping, they're paying for tax, they're paying for CFO, they're paying for insurance services, they're paying for wealth management potentially, they're paying for HR consulting. And in a lot of ways, like we are the one that's in there the most. Like we're in our clients' books every week. So we probably have in some ways the closest relationship. So like how can we build on that relationship more? That's certainly like our long term, you know, BHAG and EOS terms. Like we want to be serving, 1,000+ customers. We want to have over 300 employees, and that's going to cover all of those lines of service. In the short term, though, medium term, we're focused on System 6 finance. So
Okay.
bookkeeping, which we do today, payroll, bill pay, tax, which we're about to get into, and then sort of CFO advisory, which we're launching right now. So that one we did with a hire. We hired a person from a much larger company to come start System 6 Enterprise here, and then we're buying tax. I think I'm gonna kind of absorb and let those mature probably over the next 12, 18 months while continuing to try and do organic growth. And then we might work at, hey, should we get into HR? Should we get into insurance? But that stuff to me is more medium long term. I think there's a ton of room to run on being like an awesome financial services provider. And, we can continue to grow organically. We can buy other bookkeeping, tax, CFO firms. And then, yeah, maybe we'll bring other stuff in over time. But short, medium term, like we want to be the go-to finance provider. And
Sure.
then let's keep that growing for a while.
Interesting. How do you view the role of the human in all of this changing over time?
For sure. I mean, there's definitely some risk and probably more change in my industry than, if I bought a plumbing business. I think that I feel very, very confident that the small business owner is always going to need and want, a highly competent, advisory minded financial person to be working with. I don't ever see a small business owner, you know, letting a bot or AI do everything. And it's really our job to make sure that we are using the best technology and staying on top of what's changing so that, yeah, like we can be doing this as efficiently and as cost effectively as possible and like passing on sort of the AI and technology and finance revolution to our small business clients. Most of the kind of exciting tools and technology out there are like on the margin stuff, like making bill pay better. Ramp is, a great example of this. They're building a lot of really exciting stuff into what they're doing, helping us record meeting transcripts so we can more quickly get proposals out or so, create a repository of onboarding meetings so that we can make the next onboarding better because now our team can go talk to the kind of internal, GPT that we built around onboarding. So I think in the short, there's no like general ledger yet that's going to replace bookkeeping for small businesses that are a little bit disorganized. If you're like a super simple startup, there's some AI out there, but yeah, I think right now and for the foreseeable future, our job is to just increasingly leverage technology. And I think it might over time mean we have fewer junior people and we're more of a top heavy organization. But we got to keep an eye on it.
Yeah. I think my personal concern is like for industries where that's true, how do you make sure you still have the mid-level and senior level people if like all of a sudden there's no longer really a junior
Yeah, I mean, I
position
think
needed?
it's, bringing in junior people who are maybe more of a tech expert and
Sure.
then like training them on some of the advisory stuff. But I think it is like a real question risk, big picture accounting for sure. Like 10 years from now, is PwC hiring tens of thousands of graduates every year
Right.
to do really manual work? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's smart enough to really know. So
Yeah.
it's definitely something we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah. It's definitely not specific to accounting. I think you can kind
No,
of play that out across any knowledge
banking,
work.
consulting, IT, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I
Interesting.
think I can't solve it, but I got to keep my eye on it.
Yeah. The other trend that's happened is so much interest in terms of rolling up or consolidating the industry. What's
Yeah,
your outlook on the craze?
yeah. Everybody. I mean, it's funny. Like, a couple years ago, there's some certain folks who I remember telling me, like, "Why are you buying an accounting firm? Like we've looked at that before. We don't think it's a good idea." And I put a chip on my shoulder, and some of those folks are now, trying to buy or have bought. Um, Look, generally speaking, I'm pretty positive on it. I mean, I accounting services It's a mission critical service that every small business, medium business needs. Decent margin, it's recurring revenue. Like there's a lot of reasons why, um, as an industry, it's attractive to private equity. I think with any private equity roll up, some are going to go great and some are going to go wrong. I think you have to be, it's harder than maybe like rolling up in some ways home services, because I think the people are more mission critical. Like if you think about it, you may not know who the owner of your local plumbing business is, and you may not notice if the texts change because you only call 3 times a year.
Yeah.
But, accounting, like most firms, you do know the owner, and also you definitely know your relationship person. And so in M&A, you just have to make sure there's really good retention of those people. And I think that's where there's danger for private equity, which is like, if they turn the dial too much on, operational efficiency, do some folks not want to work in that type of organization anymore? But overall, I mean, look, I used to work in private equity. I've got a lot of friends in that world. I think like it's generally working and generally going to work. I think the one danger is there are a lot of accounting firms in general, which is why it's attractive to private equity and roll up people, myself included. But there's a lot that are not acquirable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like super old school processes, super old school people, and super old school clients. And, it's easy on a spreadsheet to buy that thing for a low multiple and say you're going to modernize everything. But like, if the people that you're hiring as a part of that acquisition don't want to come along for the journey, and especially if the clients still want to come like drop off their returns and paper,
Sure.
it's not going to work. So you just have to be careful of that. There's definitely some people that are falling in love with, I can buy accounting firms for 3 times EBITDA. I would argue that anything selling at that level is like probably not worth acquiring.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any other kind of red flags or tips you would give folks?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like, I mean, there's, in the weeds questions, like how many of your clients do you meet with in person every year? I meet, we don't schedule a lot of meetings, but they swing by the office and drop stuff off, like red flag.
Sure.
What tax software are you using? Like, is it cloud-based versus on-prem? What accounting software are you using? So QuickBooks Online, which is the cloud-based version of QuickBooks. Some firms will still have some legacy clients on QuickBooks Desktop. But if you're talking to a firm, you're like, oh yeah, all of our clients are on QuickBooks Desktop. Chances are that's not like a super modern customer list. In person versus hybrid, in person 5 days a week. That's not a complete red flag, but there's more and more hybrid happening in accounting. Those are probably, some of the things I'd look at. Go on the website, look at the age,
Yeah.
of folks. Like there's some of that as well.
Okay. And are there any service offerings that you want to stay away from?
I've changed my mind on this. So I used to sort of not be interested in QOE and transaction advisory work because it's so project based, but I would like to get into that because, and now we have a super close partnership with a firm that's doing that today. And we might even bring it in house over time because it's like a customer acquisition channel. If you're going to do a QOE for somebody, they're almost always going to need tax and bookkeeping work. Generally speaking, like project work, I don't love, that's because I'm drinking the elixir of, we get paid every week by our customers. So it just gives me a lot of cash flow certainty. But I think I'd now view some project work as customer acquisition and almost like put it in a different bucket on the P&L. So yeah, I mean, I think like other stuff we turn away. I mean, there's not a lot of work. It's more the customer. Like we're a high touch professional service business. Like we don't want to work with assholes. We filter for that in the sales process. Like that's probably the thing we walk away from the most is like, we don't get a lot of, a-holes, but someone who's super chaotic, they're super low response rate on email during the sales process. Like that's a red flag that might be a hard person to work with.
Yep. Speaking of, that's a good segue into y'all work with a ton of acquisition entrepreneurs. When should people think about reaching out to you? Is it like, I imagine it's while they're under contract and not, 30 days after close?
We, certainly not after close. Tim, who leads sales for us, he goes to a lot of these conferences. He's an entrepreneur himself. He's got a business. He's a vending machine business that he's working on the side. And he just loves, he ran a landscaping business and he sold it before he came into accounting. So he loves just like talking to folks that are doing cool things.
Sure.
So we generally recommend, like, look, if you want to, network with Tim, sure. Like, you can have a call if you're searching, we work with a lot of searchers, but generally once you're under contracts to buy a business, reach out to us. Again, we're not necessarily doing a ton of work pre-close unless we're, partnering up with a QOE firm to get your QOE done. But there's a lot of stuff that you need to think about ahead of time. Do you have payroll set up? Do you have new bank accounts set up? You probably have a working capital true up with the owner who's going to do the accounting for that. So yeah, generally, like, you're going to get under LOI. You're going to do a couple of weeks of like business diligence, customer contracts, customer concentration, retention. Once that looks good and you're like, I like this business, I'm going to try and go through, lending and get the and real like the diligence, get the deal done, reach out to us.
Awesome. And then go to the website, shoot Tim, Tim an email.
You can, so system6.com, spelled out SIX. There's a get started button there. You can also email us, hello@system6.com.
Okay.
You can DM me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm available, and I'll be happy to connect you with Tim, who leads our sales efforts.
Amazing. Well, Chris, thanks so much for coming on. It's been really cool to hear about your story and nerd out a bit on the accounting services market.
Yeah, thanks, Will, for having me. Like I said, I love what you guys are doing, which is, helping folks with fundraising. And I think a lot of folks are realizing, hey, buying a small business it's hard. Like, I'm not one of these course gurus who's going to tell you it's an easy path to being a billionaire.
Right.
But I wake up more energized every day than I ever have in my professional career. And that's, I think, super valuable over the long run. And, you get to make a difference in a very tangible way, which I really appreciate as well.
Totally. Awesome.